welcome to this session on synergies in EU national and regional food strategies. So we'll be digging in this session into what the main priorities of a food system strategy should look like on a policy level, be that European, national or regional, but also, and perhaps more importantly, how these can better collaborate and share best practices. So this is hoping to give the Flanders food strategy a bit of a direction on how to embed itself into the European framework and create linkages between the projects that are already ongoing. And so for this, I would like to welcome to the stage, we firstly have with us today Chris Rolls from the Flemish Agriculture and Fisheries Agency. We have Colleen Kestio, who is from Good Food Brussels. We have as well Angèle Liègre from the cities, Northern Netherlands cities of the EU office. And we also have with us today Joke Chauvelage, the member of the European Committee of Regions and the Flemish Parliament. So if you can all just take a seat here. And so we'll be firstly hearing from each of our speakers a short presentation. So I will give Chris the floor first for your presentation.
I believe this is a presentation of my colleague. Yeah, it's another presentation.
I think that's Colleen's.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you want me to go
Yeah. Maybe.
That's the better way around. Okay. Quick swap in agenda. Thinking quick enough, please. Okay, so as you might guess, my name is Colleen Kestio and I work for the coordination of the Good Food Strategy in Brussels. The Brussels capital region is pretty innovative and we lead a lot of different strategy to improve the quality of life of our inhabitants. And the Good Food Strategy is a perfect example because it is highly transformative and also co-sponsored by different administrations in Brussels. So not only the environment agency, but also the economic, the healthcare agency and the social cohesion departments of our Brussels administration. We were really innovative because we were the first in 2015 to launch a food policy, a regional food policy, and there are only 4 regions in Europe with a food policy right now. Why we call it good food? Because what we refer to as good food are sustainable and healthy diets. So I guess you're all familiar with diets made of local, seasonal, fresh ingredients, limiting food waste, replacing animal-based proteins by plant-based protein, and so on. But I'm mainly here today to share with you our ambition, so really our common cause we are all driven by, which is we aim at requalifying our food and agriculture system towards more resilient and sustainable models by 2030. And as I said before, it all started in 2015 with the first Good Food Strategy. There was the result of an association between the economic and environmental pillars in the region. And in about 5 years, it already led to concrete achievements such as promoting production among citizens, speeding up the transitions of our restaurants and canteens in Brussels, and many more. But we really wanted to reinforce that first dynamic that we had created with the first strategy. And in 2021, we entered a year-long co-construction participatory process with more than 300 stakeholders in Brussels, representing the entire food value chain. And it was very innovative for our administration because we had to engage with all these stakeholders in working groups and work together towards our common cause. And here we are with our Good Food 2 strategy today. And the main difference with the first one is that we involve, as I said, also the social health stakeholders in our region. And this is key for us, a key to success, as 1/3 of our population in Brussels has an income below poverty line, and 3/4 of our inhabitants see prices as the main obstacle to sustainable and healthy diets. So we really need to make good food more accessible for our population. So we all share the same vision, but what do we concretely do? We've summarized our strategy on a plate, and we've identified 5 main opportunities, and we are following 4 cross-cutting principles you can see at the top. The first one is about participative governance to break down barriers, but I will come back to that in a few minutes because it's our main focus today. But we also intend to meet global challenges, such as protecting nature and biodiversity, mitigating climate change, as well as local challenges. Our city is very diverse in landscape, but also in communities. And we aim for a full integration with our social and health policies, as I mentioned before. In brief, what are these 5 opportunities about? The first is that we really want to support producers who are engaged in an agroecological and or transition model and help them protecting the agricultural land, but not only professional farmers, but also stimulate the food production by citizens in public or private spaces. This is for the first opportunity. Our second priority is regarding supply. So we want to better connect the demand for good food products in Brussels with the supply, mainly coming from our neighboring regions in Belgium. And not only getting food to Brussels, but also processing it in Brussels. The third theme is about ensuring access to good food for all in shops, but also in restaurants and canteens. The fourth opportunity in purple is more about how we can improve food environments to make the healthy and sustainable choices easier for our population. And the last one, we will work on that from 2025 onwards, is about reducing food loss and waste, but also reprocessing food surplus into new products for human consumption. What I think is mostly interesting for us, for you today, is how we organized and how we structured our governance processes to collaborate towards that shared ambition I just mentioned before. It is highly complex because we have a complex web of stakeholders going all the way from the left, the political level. As I mentioned, a lot of administrations are involved, so it means also a lot of ministers in yellow, going all the way to the right with our whole community, so all the stakeholders who are involved in the strategy. To coordinate all these stakeholders, we have in the middle a coordination committee, including the 5 main administrations of Brussels who are involved in the strategy. And they are in direct contact with the other governance levels. So as well, the 19 municipalities of Brussels, so the local level, they are very active. 2 of them have their own local food council. So interaction with the local level, but also with the other regions of Belgium. I already mentioned the link between supply and demand, but we also collaborate more and more together, even though more synergies could still be created. And in yellow, this is our regional participatory council, food council, and they are really key to maintain a direct contact with the professional on the fields. So their role is to advise the coordination committee on all strategic discussions. So it can be the validation of the work agenda for the following year, the validation of the budget, the monitoring of the progress of the different actions in the strategy. They are always involved and provide feedback from professionals in the field. Regarding governance, we faced some challenges in the first governance of the first good food strategy, and that's why we tried in the second one to really integrate all best practices that we have learned. But since these governance bodies have been launched in 2022, we're at an early stage, so I cannot yet conclude if it's working properly, but so far so good. And I'm looking forward to the dialogue with my colleagues to see how we can create even more synergies with the other governance levels.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yep. Thank you for that. And now, now it's your turn, Chris, so I'll pass you the floor.
Good afternoon. So I'm Chris Roels from the Flemish Agency for Agriculture and Fisheries, and we're responsible for coordination of the Flemish food strategy, Go for Food. So in a short presentation, I'm going to learn you something about the strategy, also focusing on synergy and governance aspects. So first, to give you some idea, so Go for Food is our name, and it was important to have this food strategy because when we look at our food system, it's a complex, open, and connected food system. So we need that systemic approach, which has already also been in the debate this morning in the plenary session. We need a compass, we need a framework for policy and actions, because we are confronted with urgent vulnerabilities and challenges at different levels. So that's why we created this strategy, also because there was a political ambition to really come forward with a strategy on our food system. Our food strategy is not a very detailed blueprint for the future, but it's an integrated picture of the food system with a set of strategic goals and a picture of how to achieve these goals together, how they are aligned with each other. So it's a common framework for action of all players in the food system, and it's made to facilitate and enhance cooperation between all different actors on the field and in policy. This is how the strategy looks like. This is the content of the strategy. I'm not going to get into detail, but we have 4 pillars. We have healthy and sustainable food for all, with objectives on food inequality or food environment, for instance. We have a pillar with food system within ecological limits, working on a circular food system, pushing the protein transition, for example. We have a pillar on commitment to a resilient food economy. That's about a fair food economy, more trust and collaboration in the food chain. And we have the 3rd pillar, connecting farmers to citizens and also all actors in between, so that reconnection is also important. And in the middle, you see we've given it a name. It's called Systemic Heart, with a few principles that we want to apply in all strategic objectives. It's about systemic thinking and acting. It's about learning to change, which is not always easy. We've heard it also today that we have to find new ways of working towards common goals, common vision. So we have to learn how to change, how to do things differently. And we have to collaborate across border of our own policy domains, across border of our regions, across border of our policy levels. We have developed a few work paths for each strategic goal, but now we're really focused on the implementation through a set of food deals. And these food deals are leverage actions that can help realize the strategy and that work on multiple strategic goals at once. So they are beneficial for example, both health, social well-being, innovation, things like that. We try to use a systemic view in these food deals, and it's not just work of 1 or 2 partners in a government. It's always a question of working with the most relevant stakeholders to get them on board. We have now a first set of deals initiated and working on that. We have deals on fair prices, on the food environment, on local food strategies, on social distribution, on agroecology. So they're now put into place and are being rolled out. And we try to support these deals, not only by bringing everybody together, but also on the side of facilitation, financial support for actions, and of course, important, linking with existing instruments. For instance, in the CAP, we have the European Innovation Partnerships, where we bring farmers together with other actors in the food chain and with research to think together about solutions for challenges that farmers see in the field. But the cooperation with other actors in the food chain is really important and is being stimulated by this measure from the European agricultural policy. Important for this session today is that we are working together on a supported inclusive food strategy. So the first thing we did when we got an assignment to create the food strategy was to look at the entire food system and look at all the different values and aspects and interests in this food system. And there are a lot of them. They're in the small circles around the big circle. And we searched for network organizations, for federations, for these organizations who can really speak for an aspect of the food system. So we have people from the health sector, we have people from the agricultural sector, NGOs, different branches of the government, cooks, you name it. So we wanted to have a broad food coalition, and this coalition has helped us to build up the strategy, to get to the strategy, and they're also now helping to guide the strategy towards implementation and in actions in the food deals. So it's really important to have this, we think, to have this inclusive food strategy with a coalition behind it to be part of it. Looking for synergies in collaboration. When we think of synergies, we think of synergies between theory and practice. So we had an idea call for food change makers. So we did a launch, bring up your idea about something that can change the food system for the better. So we searched for pioneers, and it was a broad range. It went from food, from people working on education in schools to people working with food forests, pioneers that could inspire policy so they can adjust instruments and so inspire the next generation of pioneers or support pioneers. So that's something to make synergy between theory and practice. We have Flemish Food Policy Network, where that's already a few years old, and there we try to seek policy coherence. So this is not the food strategy. It's not a agriculture policy of something of our agency. We want it to be something of the different agencies and departments of the government. It's about health. It's about environment. It's about economy. It's about social welfare, and it's about agriculture. So we bring these different branches of our government together in a network to get to know each other, to give each other information, and to start collaboration in specific policy projects, like the Flemish protein strategy, for example. Science and policy, we try to connect them in a specific platform, focusing on research and innovation, to create a common agenda. Where are we going to put our researchers for research and innovation, and how can it help the food strategy? We're also looking in different working groups and projects, looking for common ground with our neighbors from Brussels, Wallonia, and the federal government. And of course, today here and the next 2 days on the Open Food Conference, we also want to stimulate the open dialogue at European level in a search for synergies. And last but not least is that we also have a food deal focusing on the potential of local food strategies, because we see a lot of going on the local on the local level, in our cities, in our municipalities. So we want to look how can we learn from them, and how can they help us deliver on our objectives. So that's in a nutshell the Flemish food strategy today.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that overview, Chris. Now, with any luck, the next presentation will be Angèle, so I will pass you the floor.
Yes. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you still have a bit of energy to hear about another food strategy. My name is Angèle Liège. Although it sounds very French, I actually work for the representation in Brussels of 4 cities from the northern Netherlands: Assen, Emmen, Groningen, and Leeuwarden. And today I will introduce you to the newly, actually it's still very fresh, it's about to be approved, like the new food and protein strategy of Groningen. And actually I'm also here with a second hat today. I hope it will not confuse you too much, but as part of our work in Brussels, we also are active within different networks, and notably the European Regions and Research and Innovation Network, ERIN, which is also trying to promote more synergies between regions and cities across Europe with a focus on research and innovation. So I will try to briefly present you what we do in Groningen, but also how we work with other regions and cities in Europe to develop projects and also inspire each other. So as I was saying, Groningen has newly developed a new food and protein strategy. The work I already started a couple years ago, but last year there were a lot of consultations made with stakeholders, local stakeholders, and surveys to develop a strategy with a long-term vision to 2050 and some intermediary goals in 2030. It's about to be approved. And I think it's worth mentioning that it's the first city in the Netherlands with such a strategy. And also we are, I believe, the first, or like the only city in the Netherlands with an elected politician with in its portfolio like food as a topic. So this is a bit how it's structured at the moment. We have 3 pillars that have been highlighted. So production, consumption, and food ecosystem. Sorry, I thought I had switched it to English, but hopefully it's still understandable. And really the objective in 2050 is to have a more healthy and more sustainable food system where healthier, more sustainable, but also more plant-based food is made accessible to everyone. So that obviously actually links to a lot of what has been said by my previous colleagues from Brussels and Flanders. So collaborating with the whole value chain, with farmers, for instance, supporting more agroecological practices, because Groningen, I don't know if you all know, but is also surrounded by a lot of rural areas, and also working on developing more short and local value chains, food value chains. On the consumption side, there is also a link with changing behaviors, and also in the sense working with local inhabitants to help them adopting more sustainable food practices. There is also the idea of working with younger generations to already educate them already in schools to raise awareness about the importance of eating more healthier and sustainable food. And when it comes to food ecosystems, the idea there, it's more as a municipality how we can use our own urban instruments to promote this kind of transition. So using, for instance, public procurement to show already the example as a municipality, have more like vegetarian menus and this kind of things. But also when it comes to urban planning, try to make sure like we have more eatable plants or trees, fruit trees in the public spaces for everybody to use. So this is the kind of actions that they would like to focus on. And the main goal is really to create a positive impact at the local level. Obviously the reasons for the strategy, I think I'm preaching to a convinced audience, but it's nothing new to you, I believe, but like obviously there have been concerns in the Northern Netherlands about rising climate issues. Our agriculture is becoming more and more vulnerable to climate change, but also there is really this political ambition and local ambition to really switch our diets to a more plant-based proteins diet with also less food waste. And inclusivity is in this sense also an issue, like making sure that this healthy food is really affordable and accessible to everyone. And animal welfare is also one of the concerns that we have been looking at. So making sure to limit in the intensive industrialization of the food systems, and having, like, hopefully our animals and the food industry taking more into account this welfare issue. So that's a bit where we are. Maybe just to give you some examples of the goals that we would like to reach already in 2030. In the area surrounding Groningen, for instance, they would like to, they will make sure to diminish by 50%, for instance, the use of pesticides in the agriculture, make the food systems more circular. They also want to work on the balance between food and feed, in the sense that they would like to make sure that animals get more feed produced from the use of bio-waste, for instance, or biomass that is not made for human consumption. So make sure that some of the plants that are produced at the farm level are more redirected to the human food consumption. They would like as well to reduce food waste, so 80% by 2030, and no more waste by 2050. That's the objective. And already, in 2050, the idea would be to have 70% of our diets based on plant-based sources. And doing this, they would like to obviously to work with more like inhabitants, make sure that they can maybe cook together, that in every neighborhood you have a place that is really reserved for more like urban farming, common gardens, and so that people can also join or use food as a common link and be more together, like this kind of social approach to food as well. So a lot of activities are foreseen in the coming years, actually a lot linking to research and innovation projects, but also building this kind of networks already at the local level. We're not as advanced as Brussels, for instance. We're already still French, so we really need to build on these connections with all the stakeholders. And in this sense, maybe some more like feedback as well on the role of a municipality can play when it comes to food. Like, we really see the role of the municipality of Groningen as a facilitator to really create these connections with all the relevant stakeholders, including as well local citizens. And because the municipality is also itself a partner in the food value chain, and it can really stimulate like this kind of projects and local developments. And also it has a role to play when it comes to policy making, because we can obviously have an impact with our local policies. And saying this, I would like to link as well with the work we do at the European level, because this dimension of this dynamic on food also started in Groningen thanks to the Horizon project. I don't know if all of you are familiar with the Horizon 2020 or now Horizon Europe program from the European Commission on Research and Innovation. So actually there's been a project that's been going on since 2020 on food systems in urban ecosystems, linking with the Milan Urban Food Pact. If maybe some of you may know already another example of collaboration. And this is a bit from where it all started. And this is also how we would like also to work in the future, in the sense working more with other regions and cities around the world to collaborate. And one way to do it is, for instance, within European networks such as ERIN. This is a network combining more than 120 regions and cities. It's based in Brussels. And there is a specific working group called the Bioeconomy Working Group, where we look a lot at food, but also, for instance, this last 2 years, we've been working a lot on the soil mission, because I guess without healthy soils, we cannot have healthy food. So that's one other connection. And this kind of settings is really important, really to get knowledge and inspiration from all around Europe, but also to find partners, potentially developing European projects and actually advance faster together. That's a bit the idea. And we're also in direct contact in that sense with the Commission, so we can also make connections with the institutions and provide really concrete feedback from the local and regional level. So that's also how we will try with Groningen to work more on this topic in the future. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Well, that leaves last but certainly not least. I'll pass the floor to you, Jukka.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, or almost good evening. I hope you have some attention left, but I won't speak too long because I think it's very important to have also a good discussion. So first of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm here as a representative of the Committee of the Regions, and I was a rapporteur on sustainable food strategies, and that's why I think you invited me, of course. After a lot of consultation with stakeholders, civil society, but of course also the regions, cities and communities and so on, we had an opinion. It was voted in the Committee of the Regions. And of course, today I will focus on what can local and regional authorities do in this matter, because let it be clear that a lot of concrete actions that has to be taken at local and regional level, and not at European and not at the national level. Of course, Europe and the national level is also important, but when it's very concrete, it will be the local level. I will focus today on 3 big conclusions in the opinion. First of all, the need of creating food environments. I think we had already good examples with the speakers before me. Secondly, there is a need for a clear governance, and there, of course, we will also look at the European level. And thirdly, there is a need of education and innovation. But let me start with the creation of food environments. Local and regional authorities have the capacity and tools to facilitate access to healthy and sustainable food. And that's, for example, with a good urban planning. I think we had already that example in Groningen, as you explained earlier. But, for example, no fast food restaurants near schools. That's a simple example, but important. When people, students come out of the school, they don't go next to the school to the fast food restaurant. You can create local markets, and I can so on. So there they have a crucial role to play. But also a very powerful tool to reach a lot of people, and also that was already mentioned, is the public procurement. We count 85 million catered meals every day in Europe, in elderly homes, in schools, in government buildings, in hospitals. So serving healthy and sustainable food in those environments has a huge impact. And it ticks so many boxes. Everything is there. It brings local and seasonal food to people. It links our rural areas with cities. It supports local farmers and provides them with a fair income. It supports the local economy. It serves, of course, also good education, but it reduces also food waste, and last but not least, it supports social innovation. But to make this work and to make it efficient, we must eliminate existing constraints. We hear a lot that it's difficult to go to more sustainable food because there are some European rules that won't let you do that. So there we have to skip those existing constraints and make them better and make them more practical to go to work with on the floor. Of course, there's also need for more guidelines, for better funding, more intensive training, and of course also a real tool where we can work with on the local and regional level. Let me proceed to the governance aspect. There's a strong need to create synergies across the different levels, and of course between countries. But the European Committee of the Regions asks really for a multi-stakeholder platform on European level, with cooperation between all the stakeholders, civil society, and of course all political levels. And as we know, a lot of regional and local authorities, they have already developed a local food strategy. Also in my region, Flanders, as Chris explained already, but we can still learn a lot from each other. And we need to make things better and easier to work on the floor. And there's also a lot that the European Union can do. There's a need, we think, for a clear framework law to make sure that sustainability of food is central in all food-related policies. Normally, as you know all, I think, it was the intention of the European Commission to have that law this year, but now we don't hear any more about it, so we hope really that it will come in the next mandate and that they will work further on it and that there will be a clear framework law. What are now, for us, as a Committee of the Regions, the building blocks of such a framework? First of all, a clear target and also a timeline that it's clear to everybody. Secondly, a good monitoring. Also there we can see how we go on and what is the progress. Also multi-level cooperation. Of course, as I said already, eliminating existing constraints. And finally, the knowledge that not one solution fits all, but that we need to work bottom up. A city is not the same as a rural area and vice versa. And then last but not least, I wish to touch the point of education and promotion. When people don't know what is good for themselves, what is good for the planet, and what is good for the producer, then it's very difficult to work on sustainability. Here, the education and the promotion of sustainable food is of the greatest importance. And there is a lot of work that we can do. A first example, the EU scheme on school fruit, vegetables and milk is a very good tool, but I think we have to have a further look on it and reform it to make it more sustainable. Secondly, the dietary guidelines, they also have to focus on how to incorporate sustainability. Thirdly, a uniform labeling. It has to be simple, it has to be scientific-based and very robust. It's a very difficult issue, and I had a lot of meetings with a lot of stakeholders, and it was one of the most difficult topics, I think, in the framework of the European Commission, but I think it's necessary because now we see everywhere other labeling, and it's very confusing for the consumer. And of course, sustainable and healthy food needs to be accessible and affordable for everyone. And a last example, the promotion of agri-food products also need to be aligned with the objectives of the Farm to Fork strategy, but also the Beating Cancer plan. So let me conclude so we can go on with some discussion. But I want to say that there will be no European food strategy when the local and regional authorities are not involved as a partner. The EU has to listen carefully to their questions, to their needs, to achieve a sustainable food strategy that is good for the consumer, that is good for the planet, and that is good for the producer. So thank you very much for your attention.
Excellent, thank you for that. Well, you clearly all have lots on your plate, both metaphorically and literally, and graphically as well for some of you. So there's some amazing work happening all over the place, as you've demonstrated here, and I want to dig in a little bit into how we can promote better collaboration here between the cities, regions, all the different work that you're doing, both within and across member states. So perhaps, Chris, I'll come to you first. I mean, you talked about the synergies that you've already created and you've already been working on. I mean, what lessons can you draw from the work that you've already done, and where do you see the gaps are for maybe closer, or the opportunities, let's say, for closer collaboration? You have a microphone, and it's here. Yeah.
Okay. The synergies we've already seen. Maybe a good example is our collaboration within the government between the different policy domains, because there we see that we used to come from a time where different policy domains start initiatives, but only being focused on their own objectives from a specific perspective. And then some of these initiatives didn't work out because after a time it seems that they weren't aligned with objectives of other partners, of other departments of the government. So when you bring the different domains of government together from the beginning, it takes a little bit of time to get to know each other better. but in the end it gives better results because it's more, it starts from a collaboration and it's more different. The project will be carried on from different aspects. It's good for everybody's objectives. So that's something we noticed that worked, and maybe a thing where we still can improve further is, to look at synergies between the different levels, because we are now working on issues that we see. This is very important. We want to play our part, but this is something they have. This is something Europe has to deal with, or that has to be done at a higher level. And some things we see we're trying to do, but this should be better be done at a more local level, adapted to the regional, local context. So there is, we can still make progress on how to get more collaboration between levels. And do it more in a more structured way, so that we can help each other and work more efficiently also.
Okay, and Colleen, let me come to the same kind of question with you. I mean, you spoke about this complex web of stakeholders that you've been working within, and you said that you had some lessons learned and maybe that you had decided to integrate some best practices. Can I dig in a little bit on that? What kind of best practices did you try, and what did you learn, and did you try and implement the second time round?
One of our biggest challenges was to keep all stakeholders aligned with the same level of information, also including the different governance level, as you just said. And what we implemented is we have now a web portal which is accessible to all, every citizen, but also every stakeholder. It could be an association or a minister, and they have access to all transparent information about the strategy. So it means all meeting notes from the different working groups who are working in the operationalization of the strategy, but also reports on how we are progressing on the different activities with our indicators and everything. And it really helped because sometimes federation or the civil society may feel we keep information for ourselves, or at least it was the case before. But now they have access to everything, and it really helps to keep everyone aligned. There was one of our challenges. The other one was, as Chris mentioned, the coherence between the different governance levels, because I think local and regional levels are really complementary. The local governments have the better knowledge of the context of how SMEs are working on the field, really the practitioners' experience. While at the regional level, we have different competencies, but it also means different resources and capabilities to bring stakeholders together. If you want to talk with a multinational company, they do not want to enter a dialogue with every city because it's highly fragmented. They want a coherent approach for even one region or all regions of our country or different countries. So we have a lever that we can use. So that was also something we really worked on, the coherence. And one good practice is that we involved the local governments in the policy making so that they can also align their own local policies in the implementation. So that's two things I think we learned
from the beginning, getting them involved, and similar, echoing what Chris was saying as well there. Okay, great. Let me pass to you, Angèle, now. I was very interested to hear about your work with Erin and the EU network there. So I'm wondering if maybe you could expand a bit on your experience there and talk, from your perspective, what do you think? How do you think the EU can better support local and regional and national governments in successfully developing and implementing these food strategies? And maybe you can draw on your experience with the network there on how the EU can help fill in some gaps there.
All right, yeah, I can try to answer to that. Well, obviously, I come as well with a perspective more focused on European projects. I think already that is a very good instrument to support like local and regional developments. Like at least we've seen in Groningen that it really gave a push to the local strategy and the local dynamics. But I think like this kind of programs like LIFE, Horizon Europe, all this kind of funding that can be made available to accelerate the transition, these are really, really useful. But I'm also thinking of the cohesion funds, for instance, that can really be used at, to promote like local projects, to support companies when they want to become more circular, because sometimes they lack the capacity, they lack the knowledge. So this kind of instruments are really interesting. And what we've seen within ERIN as well is really when you make the connection between different cities and regions, you actually see like we have, even though we are in different countries, we actually have the same challenges. So by connecting them in this kind of network and actually bringing the Commission there, they can really hear and see concretely what happens, and then that usually helps. They have different tools and instruments already in place, like on food, like they also have this Food 2030 strategy on research and innovation, for instance, that we've been trying to follow like closely to also provide inputs. Like this kind of things are really important and should really be kept. But on our side, I would say like the European projects are really, really key in that sense.
Jürgen, maybe I bring you in on this point. Something that you emphasised quite strongly in your opening remarks, you talked about the Sustainable Food Systems Law, which didn't work out. We didn't really see anything come from that. Within that, you know, there were elements of public procurement, the school schemes, promotion policy. So this Sustainable Food Systems Law was, you know, supposed to be the backbone of sustainability initiatives moving forwards. What is the impact of this? And you said about, you know, how we can take this forward. How do you see that we can ensure this is picked up again in the next mandate, and how important do you think that is for shaping the future kind of direction of
I think it's necessary, and that we really need it, because today it's too much fragmented, and you have of course European rules about public procurement, but you also have of course everything about agriculture, you have the CAP, you have the Beating Cancer Plan, and I can go on, and the Green Deal of course, and Farm to Fork. That's all fragmented, but we need a clear goal, a clear guideline. And I think global but act local is here very typical, and that is what we need. But I think everything is on the table of the European Commission. But I think they had a little, they were afraid, I think, a little, because there are elections in June, and now we see it's very actual with the farmers who come on the street, but I think they cannot let it go and do nothing. I think with the new Commission, they have to be that framework law, and it will be on the table. But I think it's very important to get it very quick and to act really good and to show that the European Commission has the power to come with the framework law. It's necessary to have the results. There's a lot that is already done at the local level, at the regional level, but I have now the feeling that everybody is a little pioneer now, and they are all looking at each other, and they all have a little bit experimental issues, and they look and they see and they feel, but they need a good partner at the European level, and that's, I hope, the next step.
And staying on the theme of the SFS law, I'm curious. I mean, okay, we didn't get anything from Europe, from the EU on this front yet. But if you wanted to build your own SFS law, what components, what ingredients do you think were the key from your perspective? Maybe I'll start with Angèle, as the microphone's over there. It didn't come from the top. We're talking about building it from the bottom. What ingredients do you think are core, you know, this overarching SFS law from your perspective is the most important?
That's actually a very tough question, because, one point which is obvious, because I'm working for a city, then, okay, including the regional and local level in it, which way, like, maybe that's more a critic on ourselves, but also linking to what Colleen was saying, like, at the local level, we are more on the implementation side, so sometimes we struggle a bit to provide inputs to make sure, like, already from the beginning, from the writing of the law, that we also need to be supported at this stage. So I guess in this framework, they should really listen to the challenges that are there now to make sure that the law will actually not hinder actually some already happening local developments, maybe more, and make sure, like, something that we also like to have, at least in the Northern Netherlands, is room for experimentation. And, like, the law should not be too strict in the sense that it should allow for maybe local projects to develop, test things, make mistakes, learn from it, but not make it too strict from the start. allow for more flexibility as well. Because there's a lot of happening and a lot of good ideas, but if the law is already preventing this, then it would be an issue.
To give the space for people to grow and
like they talk a lot about sandboxes, this kind of idea, like really provide with room for experimentation.
Sandboxes, like playing in the sandbox.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that image. Okay, Colleen, let me come to you with the same question, and maybe also how you can kind of bring the spirit to the next mandate and ensure this idea is again picked up. I mean, how important do you see that is for the future direction of work?
It's definitely important. Regarding the Brussels Capital Region, we now have very little connection with the European level, also because we chose to work on what we could control and not lobbying at the upper level. But it's definitely important because we need the European level for, as you mentioned, eco-labeling, the legislation on the free market, which prevents us from promoting local products and sustainable procurements. There are many things we are expecting from the European level. Regarding the law, there are so many elements to be integrated. If I had to choose one, I would say a better match between what are the roles of the different stakeholders and the resources that are linked. We see really a mismatch now between, for example, the farmers, what the efforts they have to put in the transition, and the reward they get it. So we really need a better match between the different roles and functions, and then the resources that are affiliated.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Chris, bring on the same point. Your views on this?
Yeah, when I first saw what was going to be tackled in the framework law, I thought that's exactly what we need, because they were looking at what could Europe do, and they would also give a little bit of guidance in some issues where different member states and different stakeholders are focusing on their own. For instance, like the labeling, sustainability labeling, or definitions of monitoring. We're all working a little bit on that, but we should do it at the European level. It's much more efficient, it's much more effective, and then we can have maybe a breakthrough in some discussions that are already going on for quite a few years, because we can all develop some things, but in the end, Europe is, we companies and citizens and governments work across borders, so there are things that we have to handle at the European level. So it's hard to pick one thing. I thought the initial things from the framework law were exactly things that they could do at European level to complement all the other things that we're doing at lower levels.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and one thing I wanted to pick up on, I think you're going to have to pass a microphone back down. I'm afraid. One thing I wanted to pick up on and build a little bit. Jörg, you said there was the idea of building a European multi-stakeholder platform on sustainable food systems. Perhaps we can dig into that a little bit. And I know there was this proposal from the European Economic and Social Committee about this building of a European Food Policy Council. Can you dig into that a little bit? What would that entail? How do you see that help integrate and support synergies between actors?
Yes, I think it. You hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. I think it's necessary to have such a council or a multi-stakeholder platform. I think what's in the name, it can be both. I think, because there you can exchange good examples. There you can ask some questions. There you can tell what the barriers are at each level, what can be better. So I don't believe in the European Commission that has a strategy and that's it. I think you have to build it and you have to make it better each time. You have a council who can give good advice and so on. So you have to listen to the local level, to the people who are with both feet on the ground to make it better. Otherwise, I think it won't work. We have seen that already in some other topics at the European level, that when you work not bottom up, it won't work, and you don't have the results on the floor. So you really need the local, regional level, but also all the stakeholders. A lot of civil society stakeholders work already today on that sustainable food strategy, and you have to listen to them, you have to involve them, you have to look how they can work with us all together to reach those targets. So that's how we see it, and of course also there has to be a very important role for the local and regional authorities to also have an important voice in the whole strategy. But not only them, also of course all the other stakeholders.
Okay. And I just wanted to pick up on a point that, Chris, you spoke about on the answer to your first question. Talking about tackling systemic issues, you said something that was quite interesting. You said that within the departments, you felt that they were actually working together really quite well between the different domains. I mean, to tackle the systemic issues that we're talking about here, it crosses policy levels, it crosses borders, it crosses domains. Can you talk a little bit more about the success that you found in operating between those different levels? Because it's not always what we see maybe at the EU level, let's say, between these different departments. How do you see that we can create a better working environment between the elements that cross policy levels and borders?
It also, I think it's also a little bit. There has to be a will to cooperate, and you have to make something that works for the different parties. When I, for instance, looked at what we did at the Flemish protein strategy, that's also connected to the food strategy, is that we didn't look at it from, it's about the protein transition, but we didn't want it to be, this is an agricultural strategy. We also looked at it, this also has innovation benefits, and then we went to our colleagues from innovation. How do you see innovation? What are your goals, your objectives? And there's also a health aspect. Okay, and what is keeping you awake on the health aspects? And then we talked to the environment. And of course, they said, "Oh yeah, protein transition is also very important." So there we started from the beginning to work together. And I don't think there is a recipe for success. You just have to be open for the objectives and the sensitivities of the other partners at the other domains and the levels. And you have to sometimes you see something from, oh yeah, that's something we can do. Oh yeah, but that partner is not going to like it. Okay, then we talk a little bit more, and then we find another solution that is good for both of them. So it's, I think, continuously checking, are the other partners still on board? Is what we're doing really what the other domains or levels also want to pursue from their own agenda or perspective? But I don't really have a recipe for success yet. If somebody has it, please share it with me.
We're looking for it collaboratively. Yeah. And so obviously this conversation does come at a pretty key time in terms of the EU, just before the EU elections. I thought maybe we could do a round from each of the speakers to say what your key messages would be ahead of the next mandate for the new wave of politicians we're going to see. Perhaps we'll start with Colleen, as you just spoke, and then we'll move back around. What would you say your key messages would be ahead of this key moment?
We need a common framework. I think that's clear. Yes, we need it because, as you mentioned, we all have pilots in our own territories, and we have success stories to be shared with other regions, with other local governments, and we want to align with European tools that could be shared between the different strategies. So we need that framework.
Angèle?
I'll use this one. I think my message would be keep the Green Deal, please. Keep the ambition, and please try not to go back forward in time, but rather move forward with everyone. And I think the issue there is really the issue of resources, and especially resources for our farmers, making them feel like they can really be part of this transition and not like they feel now, I think, excluded.
To work with them,
alongside them, raise awareness and really keep the ambition, but work more, like listen more to what they need. Because like I think you were mentioning it, like the balance between the roles and the resources, and I think we expect a lot of them, and they are really at the basis of our food systems. We cannot do it without them, but they are under a lot of pressure and to change. And I don't think we can do it obviously without them, but also without allowing them more support, be it knowledge, capacity, funding. That's also the buzzword. But still work with them.
And so listening as well was the key message there. You think there's not enough listening?
Not the right way, I think. But that's maybe a more personal opinion as well.
Okay. Joke, your message ahead of the elections.
Yes, of course, we need the framework, I mentioned already, but also what I wanted to say is involve the local and regional authorities as a real partner. And don't be afraid to make choices. Don't be afraid to have a clear target for sustainable food. I think we really need it. It's important to all levels, but it's important for the planet, it's important for the consumers, and it's important for the producers. And that is the key message. Don't be afraid, go for it, and make some very important choices.
Don't be afraid, be bold. Okay. And Chris, what would your reflections be there?
Keep on working on the European food policy. They started with the farm-to-fork strategy. They delivered things. Some things were more difficult to deliver, and now they're like protesting and things like that. But keep working on it, and think the challenges of our food system aren't going anywhere. It's only going to be more critical. So we have to keep building on the European food policy, in which we involve all actors. And we are all trying to do our part at our level, but we're also looking at the European level to do their part. So keep on building this European food policy.
Excellent. Okay, clear messages, good ahead of a key moment. Well, I would now, so we did speak a lot about this multi-stakeholder platform already with Jukka, and on that note, I would like to bring someone else to the stage. So we have with us today Leuven from the European Food Forum, who is also going to join us to share her reflections on what we have heard and wrap up a little bit from today. So would you like to come to the stage? You can come maybe this side, maybe stand at the... Yeah? Okay. Here? Yeah. Yes, that's nice, yeah.
Thank you so much. So let's put my glasses on because I'm getting older.
That's helpful, yeah.
So first of all, thank you so much for this invitation. It was a very interesting, and this is a very interesting discussion. I'm here as the director of the European Food Forum, something special that was created at the beginning of this legislature period. The European Food Forum is a multi-stakeholder platform that was founded by 5 members of the European Parliament from 3 political groups from 5 member states, with the intention to really trying to put together as much as possible stakeholders, different kind of stakeholders, to discuss about sustainable food system, to discuss about all this kind of issues linked to the food sector, and to create a real food policy, to include, to have a bottom-up approach. And indeed, the Committee of the Region immediately joined the forum as special member because it's an institution. And now, after 4 years, the forum has almost 90 members. What is the forum exactly? Is an independent, politically elected, non-partisan, multi-stakeholder forum as I said, founded, led and governed by the elected members of the European Parliament. It includes two other kinds of categories. One category is the business members, which are including the companies and the business associations. And the other are the civil society, research and innovation, university, public administration, think tanks, and plus two special members of the Committee of the Regions and the EAT Food. What we do, what the European Food Forum is doing, debates on different kind of topics with a lot of speakers, really a lot. Natasha knows something because she was a moderator sometimes, because the important thing for the funding members, members of the European Parliament, and also for the others, is just to stay together and to discuss one specific topic at 360 degrees. And to try to find a solution. The discussion was very, very interesting, and actually what you said is fundamental to reach a consensus and to reach and to try to find solutions. Because it's not so easy to promote collaboration, and we saw that there were especially in this legislative period, a lot of polarization, so this was bringing a lot of silos. The European Food Forum was created just to try to avoid those kind of silos, just to try to put all the stakeholders in the same tables to express their own position, to try to find the best solution. We all know that food is not only basic human needs, but it's also driven social, economic, and environmental change. You express this, you underline this several times in all your different kind of projects, from the Committee of the Region, from the city projects, from the ERIN, which is a regional network, and this is very important. Food systems, we know, are complex and interrelated, involving multiple actors and sectors, such as agriculture, health, environment, trade, education, culture, and more. Plus, that's why it's very important to let all the citizens interact. It's very important also to create these synergies among all the food supply chains, starting from the farmers ending to the consumers, but also including research and innovation, which is fundamental because it's not possible to create barriers also on innovations, including also our universities. Our universities are fantastic. They are providing solutions which are the future, including young people. This is another important thing. And you didn't mention, but I think that it was included in your speech, that it's very important to go local. Only going local in this bottom-up approach, you can understand what is needed. And only going local, finally, you can be more and more inclusive. You can understand what is needed, and you can share best practices, which are the best solutions. So let's go on collaboration between cities and regions. I mentioned that we have a special member of the Committee of the Regions. We have also ICLEI. ICLEI, it's another international association, and our member is the European member that are fighting on specific topics which are very important. Education for kids, which is one of the pieces of the cake. That can find solutions. Education for kids on nutrition, on how to understand how to eat. Not to say you need to eat just this or that, but it's very important how to eat, and the kid is teaching also to the parents what to buy. And then there is another important thing that was mentioned by the friend from the Committee of the Region, and this important thing and the power of the local administration is the procurement. This is a huge power. The procurement is really a huge power, but unfortunately, there are not common rules on procurement. Unfortunately, there are not common rules on canteens, and those are all the discussions that we are having in the European Food Forum. Those discussions are linked, of course, also, we did 2 events on labeling. I do not know how many of you know that in Europe there are more than hundreds of front-of-pack labelings. And so the discussion is very, very, very big and very intense. We did so many intervention also and debates on other things that are linked also with inclusivity and on the situation of the food poverty in Europe. Nobody's talking about the situation of poverty in Europe and the importance of the food banks. It's one topic that should be raised. And because the population is linked also to that, sustainable food systems are also those. And I put a list of the things that we discussed. I mentioned food waste. There was a last event. The next event is going to be on the protein strategies, taking consideration the conventional agriculture, but all the different kind of novel foods, just to understand. And another important thing that was mentioned from you is also the global dimension. The global dimension, because it allows also to have exchange on different kinds of legislation and to keep the good from the others' legislation, to maintain the high quality standards that the European legislation has. So the European Food Forum is something, I have to say, I have the honor to be part of this, and it's something magic, because it's growing, and apparently starting from 5 founders, members of the European Parliament, and now we have almost 90 members. This means that this kind of dialogue was needed. And the point is that this kind of dialogue needs to grow. It needs to grow in a very easy and simple way without creating barriers and allowing everybody to express themselves in an open debate. Another thing that I have to say, the European Food Policy Council, fantastic idea, great idea, fundamental idea, because it's taking an integrated approach, needs alignment of policies, is focusing on sustainable development and quality and legitimacy. All principles that are needed. And there is a spot that us, as European Food Forum, we try to cover. One point that we found as European Food Forum is also the complexity. The complexity is something, because creating and managing something like that, that is not easy going as a European Food Forum, but is something that I think it is going to be a part of a law or something like that, to create a European Food Policy Council. This can create a big complexity in the coordination among different actors. And then also it's resource intensive, that require fundings, people that is working, administrative support, and all those kind of things. And this is linked also with potential bureaucracy that could create some issues. And one of the most important things, we know it very well as the European Food Forum, is the resistance to change. The European Food Forum was something that at the beginning was foreseen like something, what is this? It's completely different, but why there is this need to put together all the different kind of actors in the same table, not to position their own view, but just to try to find a solution and to express their views in a very nice, polite way, and to have final conclusions. At the beginning was not so easy, I have to admit it. But now, more and more, there are a lot of recognition about the forum. The last one, I have to say, the USDA invited which is the agricultural minister of the United States, invited the European Food Forum as an example of a good practice of a multi-stakeholder debates at the 100-year anniversary of their outlook on agri-food in Washington, D.C. And that was our members of the European Parliament participated to this. Our chair, Jürgen Tolleré, was a panelist in the transatlantic panel in this venue with 3,000 people attend this. So it was something, a very nice recognition. So this means we should stay together. We should force those kind of forums. We should force those kind of interactions because they are very important. And inclusivity is fundamental. Best practices are fundamental. Fundings are fundamental also to allow the different kind of best practice to share and to stay together and to find the best solution ever. I do not know if I'm too long. I guess that I said all the things that I wanted to say. Just to conclude, wrapping up all the discussion. What was said from all of you was very clear things. The first one, collaboration across levels and different stakeholders, fundamental. Prioritizing sustainability. Policy strategy connect environmental concern of food production, emphasizing the need for sustainable practices. And then economic potential and regional development. This should be always taken in consideration. Social and health dimension, fundamental. Food security and geopolitical context. We learn a lot from COVID. The food supply chain changed completely after COVID. It was a new life, a new restarting, and that's it. And the EU role on financial support to let everything happen, and last but not least, a framework law that everyone is waiting just to have fundamental criteria on how to proceed. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you. Well, I am aware that we're very near to the end of our time, but I did wonder if anybody, we have probably about 5-10 minutes, I wonder if anybody in the audience had any questions, and if so, I will bring the microphone to you. Has anybody got any burning questions? I know we're all a bit sleepy towards the end of the day. Any questions from the audience? Don't all jump at once. A question here. Okay. If you could just say your name and who your question is directed to.
Yes, thank you. Ana Islas Ramos from FAO, Rome. Nice to thank you so much for this very interesting session. I was busy taking notes. So in implementation of these and how you are seeing the food system, what is the role of nutrition of the national dietary guidelines? Are you integrating them in some way? Or what is it that you're doing, and how do you see healthy diets or healthy and sustainable diets in your policies? Thank you.
Okay. Is it to anyone in particular, or anyone want to come
on the 3 regional and policies? Thank you.
Okay. Anybody want to jump in on that one?
I mean, I will be very short because we haven't really started with implementation yet because we are still fresh, but maybe we have a health aspect in our policies, and it's really based on studies. Obviously, we're looking, that's also why we are shifting more to more plant-based diets. So maybe your answer would be like, we are basing our strategy as well on a lot of studies from the Lancet, for instance, but hence the shift to plant-based. That's more my answer. And then, want to go?
Yeah, maybe we in Flanders we have also dietary guidelines, and in the last review it wasn't only looked at from the health aspect but also from the environmental, and they saw that it was closely connected. So it was a win-win from both health and environment perspective, and something we also think it's very important that we also look at the economic potential, and for those who have to change or go into transition. So for instance, in our protein strategy, it's also part that we have to change a little bit our protein consumption, less animal, more plant, more alternatives. But we also want to take the farmer into that debate, because we can start importing proteins, but we can also try to grow new proteins in our own region, and so creating new business models for our farmers, so that we have also a health, ecological, and also a local agricultural advantage in this transition.
Thank you. And in Brussels, we do not have our own dietary guidelines. We are, of course, respecting the one from the federal level, so of Belgium. But I would say we go even further because they are not really up to date regarding these different parameters, not only assessing the health factors, but also the environment and the economic values of food. So we do integrate them, but we go one step ahead, I think.
Okay, we have another question here.
Yeah, later that day. Stefanie Wunder, Agora Agriculture. Natasha, I carefully listened when you asked everyone, like, what would be a key element of the Sustainable Food Systems law? And I wondered, actually, as you all made the point, like, you know, the local level should be heard. And I do understand that there's the Committee of the Region, and there are, like, different representatives. Why none of you mentioned that actually a good key element of a sustainable food system legal framework would be the requirement for member states to set up food strategies, because this is actually where the most meaningful interaction between the local level and the national level would be, I would think. And I just wondered, like, oh, I skipped that. That's actually a good idea, because it was not in the opinion of the Committee of the Regions either. So I just wondered if anybody had a thinking around that.
Okay, yeah. Anybody have any thoughts on this point? Maybe Yuka, you want to come in on this?
But I think that you're right, that that's important and that can work. But I think, but maybe I did not understood good your question, but I think that you cannot take that to say the European Commission has nothing to do. We don't need a framework law. So, but I don't think that's so okay. But then it's okay, because I'm a little afraid that European Commission says it's too difficult to come to a framework law in Europe. So please, member states and local levels, go on, and we see what will come. I think that's not what you want and not what we want. So I think you're right that also that interaction is very important, and I think we can also work better together between the member states. I think also there can be work a lot because a lot of regions go over the borders. We also had another opinion on cross-border cooperation in regions, and also there we can do a lot, I think, in Europe. But I think your comment is right.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe just extra food for thought, but I mean, I agree with you as well, like there should be national strategy, but in the sense like they should also really be concrete, because I've seen it more with the bioeconomy side. For instance, the EU came with a bioeconomy strategy, national member states were supposed to develop one, but whether it's actually being implemented is another question. And that's also a bit my fear, like coming up with yet another strategy, like national member states already have like action plans, policies on food, on agriculture, maybe not all to the same level. At least in the Netherlands, they came up with the Green Deal approach as well, with the protein strategy. So yeah, it varies from one country to the other, so maybe more like framework guidelines would be interesting to have, but I think the key aspect is really to make sure they are implemented and followed. And also that if these strategies are made, that they take into account the voices of the regional and local level, because most of the time that doesn't happen, or barely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep, you want to go? Yeah.
Yeah, just I totally agree that the key, if we want national strategies, is to have them integrated with the other levels, local and regional and European. If they're aligned, then they make sense and they will bring added value to the dialogue. But if not, it will just create even more confusion.
Okay, we have time just for one more question. It's only this side of the room that's awake. But one more question, and I know that then we have to leave.
Hi, everyone. My name is Charlotte Flechet from Ricolto, and thank you very much for the very interesting discussion. I've got a question for Mrs. Schouwvliegen, but also open to the other panelists. I'm particularly curious about what kind of practical mechanisms you think we could support or put in place to facilitate these kind of multi-level coordination? We talked, of course, about a legal framework, something that sets, a shared vision. But I'm wondering if there's any other mechanisms maybe to improve access to resources, be it funding or capacities, etc., that go beyond just the political framework. And because I understand it's quite a difficult question, if not, what could be kind of guiding principles for such mechanisms?
Okay, thank you.
I think where we have to start, that's sit together and talk to each other and have a clear strategy. And when you have a clear strategy, for example, you say we want to go to 20% organic in public procurement in all our schools, just an example. And when you have that strategy, you have that target, then I think you can go to more stakeholders, companies, other fundings, and say, okay, that's our plan. Please, you want to join us. I think that's more concrete, and so you can find partners to work with. But also, again, bottom up. Otherwise, I think it won't work. Be clear what you want to do. Have a clear target. Involve a lot of people, and then when the plan is there, you can reach other stakeholders. I think, if that's a question, is that an answer to your question?
No takers? Okay, well that brings us nicely to a close then. I want to thank all of our speakers. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you in the audience. Just a quick note to say that if you have signed up for the activity this evening, there will be buses. There's a bus, I think now, you might have to run for that one. There's a bus also at 15:15, so don't panic. There's another bus to come. If you haven't signed up for that, then I wish you all a lovely evening, and I hope to see you again tomorrow. So thank you very much.